To me, it was delightful. Honest to goodness village. There were brick walks that the Village Improvement Society built. Then they had oil lamps on the streets. Nearly everybody in town had half to 1 acre of ground. It was just a delightful atmosphere. I still can't get over it. I still say, I'm going to the village. Everyone in Falls Church used to have a front porch. I would love to just sit on my front porch watching the world go by, or just being still.
Jerry Pressman, we're here sitting on the proverbial front porch of West Broad Street. And all the front porches of the homes are gone, so we still have our lawn chairs we can sit on.
This is our front porch.
This is our front porch of Falls Church.
In this day and age, it's the best you can do, right?
And welcome to going to the village.
Yes.
Now, yes, a strong wind is blowing in our face right now, and strong winds are blowing through Falls Church.
The city? You mean the city of Falls Church?
The city of Falls Church is all I'm talking about right now.
Okay, all right.
And what kind of winds do you think are blowing through here?
There's going to be some changes here. That's what I heard.
Well, big changes. We're going to have increased numbers of buildings here, size of buildings. We're going to have increased population.
What kind of buildings are they? They're office buildings, right?
Let's start with what we have now.
Okay.
What you know, like right behind us, what's behind us?
Well, we've got the Red Lobster. That's where you go and get some fish,
yeah,
right?
It's a successful business.
Yes.
It's a beautiful building, a 1950s architecture at its finest.
Is that going to be gone?
Oh yeah, they're tearing it. By the time you see this, this will probably be gone. It's closing at the end of this month, December 2003.
Okay.
And so they're going to tear down this. They're going to tear down this building. We have some of our lovely traffic driving by here.
This is not the Indianapolis 500?
Yes, it is.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, they're going to be tearing this down and putting up some residential buildings with some commercial components to it.
Well, they already have one across the street.
Well, yeah, we'll look at that in a minute. And
there going to be two of them?
Well, there's going to be this one. It's going to be here. I think it's called the Byron.
The Byron.
And one across the street is called the Broadway.
The Broadway. All right.
The BB's.
Oh.
And then up the street, they're going to have one called the Pavilion.
The Pavilion will be up the street.
That'll be up the street, and that'll have a lot of residential. So we're going to change from 1950s architecture to 21st century archecture here.
Oh, well, that'll be kind of interesting, I think.
Well, we'll see. You know, it's a change is change. Change is change.
Yes. I have some change right here in my pocket, as a matter of fact.
And that's good, isn't it?
Yes, that is good.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you can get a lot with that.
Yeah.
Now, what do you think some of this change is going to bring to Falls Church here? You're the master of all this.
Well, here's one of the things that it'll bring. It'll bring more traffic, and that's good.
We have traffic in Falls Church?
Oh, yes, we have traffic. We're known for our traffic.
In fact, probably the audience can't even hear us because of the traffic going by.
They probably can't. They can't hear all the interesting things we're saying. But we're known for our traffic.
We are known for our traffic, yes.
What we want to do is to get some of them to stop and buy some things, but that's a whole other business. But maybe they'll be moving into these
buildings. They're not going to stop
buildings.
and buy any fish, that's for sure.
No. We'll have to go to one of the old places until they tear them down.
Right.
I used to come here and eat a lot, but you're telling me it'll be gone, right?
Oh yeah, it'll be gone by the time you see this on television.
I don't believe it.
Well, that's true. There's all kinds of stuff.
Has that been passed?
Oh yeah, everything's,
Oh, it's still.
everything's
Oh,
cleared. Yeah,
I didn't. I thought we could still argue a little bit.
No. So anyway, this
Okay.
right here, I should
Right.
tell you where we're in the Coe Valley, C-O-E. It's a valley, and if you look up that way to the west, you're going to see the hill going up.
Good, going up.
Yeah, and if you look to the east, up that way,
So
you're going to see
going
the hill going up.
Okay.
And that hill over there, going back to the west, where
Yeah.
St. James is
Yes.
called Center Hill.
Okay.
It's the center of town.
Right.
And if you go up that way,
Yeah.
it's up toward Cherry Hill, but that one is called Reed Hill, where Mr. Reed used to live back during the Civil War.
So maybe that's the reason the traffic's so fast when
Yeah,
they
it comes
come here.
down,
They like
and
to
this
come.
is this is the gulch within the gulch.
Okay.
And
all right.
this is built up land. This was swamp.
Well, the people over here aren't. There's not going to be any water in their
There's a lot
apartments,
of
is
water,
there?
not in the basement.
No, okay,
But
in the
anyway,
basement,
this is
all right.
built up, and so they
Okay.
built this on a really heavy-duty swamp. So we're on fill material here.
Okay.
And they're going to fill it up with about I don't know how many stories of residential
That's here?
properties. Yeah, with the
Here?
first floor, maybe second floor of commercial.
A little commercial.
And over here we have 4 or 5 stories of residential, and up there we're going to have a lot more residential.
So that would-
we're going to have traffic. What else do you think we'll have with that?
If you're going to have that much residential, it seems to me you're going to have more people.
You know,
What do you-
you're probably right, Jerry.
what do you think
I
about
never
that?
thought- and you
Huh?
know, that's something we've been wanting in Falls Church is more people.
More people?
More people. It's been a lot of fun here because I've noticed that since the few years I've lived here that I used to be able to cross Broad Street, and that was fun, you know. The only time I can cross it now is on a snow day.
You'd have to have a police escort to
Police
cross
escort.
that street
It's
right
pretty
there.
impressive, yeah.
Okay, even a presidential limousine
Yeah.
couldn't get across that one. All
Now,
right.
another thing they tell me, which is real interesting, in these really high-end buildings, there's no kids.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
So, because since our schools are overcrowded.
Is this a special population?
Yes, it is.
Uh-huh.
Yes, it's a very rich.
How do they do that?
Well, they're so rich that they can't have kids.
I see.
No,
That's-
it's a United States law
I
that
see,
if
that's-
you earn over a certain amount, you're
Well,
not allowed. That's,
I see.
You know the old phrase, and the poor get children,
I
and the
see.
rich can't.
I see. So they what do they do in the evening?
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to go
No, we're
there.
not
That's,
gonna go
that's
there?
for advertisements
All right,
for certain
okay.
products.
All right, okay.
But here
Well,
in
that's
Falls Church,
unfortunate.
we're importing rich people.
All right.
And
do
so
we
that-
like them?
Oh yes, I love rich
Okay,
people.
all right,
Yes,
okay.
I've wanted to be rich.
Okay.
I've never been able to do that.
All right.
So that's why I make these volunteer TV shows.
Okay, and of course I'm retired, so I have.
Yeah, well, that's because you have so much money.
Oh well, I was able to do that.
Okay. So let's see. We're building these. Let me get this straight.
All
We're
right.
tearing down these lovely 1950s
50s building.
structures that were bound to last at least another year before they collapse.
21st
And then
century.
we're putting for 21st century. We're going to have a lot more people here.
Okay.
And we're going
All
to
right,
have a
so
lot
we
more
got
traffic.
we got people, we got traffic.
Now
We got
with-
no children.
No children, right? Because
No
they're rich.
problems
It's
for-
because they're rich. There's no children.
No problems for the
Right.
schools, right?
No problems for the schools.
Okay.
The overcrowded schools are going to, because they're bringing more people, the school population is going to go down. That's a proven fact.
All right.
And
yes.
And then what we're going to do is the thing about rich people moving into these big condos is they don't need any city services. That's another proven fact. So we won't have to improve.
No police, no fire.
No
No water?
No, rich people don't start
No,
fires.
nothing.
No, they don't. No, they don't do any of that. It's
Oh,
great.
well,
it's a
terrific.
great solution.
Okay.
And so.
No, we won't need any more people at City Hall.
No, we don't need any more people at City Hall, and there's no more decisions that we'll need. And
Okay, so
I'm
the
really
so we
impressed.
have about 10,000 people now, and we're going to be having like 12,000. Or
Well, I don't know. This is within 2.2 square miles. The city is actually very small.
well, it's not that small. 2.2 square miles.
Well, actually, there were some studies done starting in the 1800s and going all the way through. They
Yeah.
found that the perfect size community is about 2 square miles.
So we're perfect.
We're perfect.
Did
However, they weren't considering this many people.
I see.
They weren't. That wasn't
was-
hard. And they were actually considering farms around
Farms
the outside.
in
so it-
rural, yeah.
Around the outside, so it could provide food. So you
Well,
don't
we've
starve
got some
during a
donkeys
disaster.
up here, so we still have some rural stuff going
donkeys
here
are you
too.
talking about?
The Republican and
No,
Democratic.
those, we have one.
those. We
Yeah,
have
we have
one.
one of
Okay.
those.
All right.
So-
but anyway, that's
So
the
what are we
extent
going
of
to
our.
do, Jerry? What are we going to do with all this?
I think we're going to have to live with it unless we can come up with some alternatives, which I don't know
Well,
exactly
Jerry-
what they are, because I've thought about it.
If
And,
you can't think of it, I think yours and my problem is we have to get rich.
is our taxes going to go down because of this, or
Well, yeah, they say if you move rich people in, that the taxes are going to go down.
that makes sense?
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, so I'm going to, it's going to be good, and that was a lovely truck. And so now some of they are bringing businesses into these high-end residential areas in the first floor.
Okay.
And now, right, we're having our first bi-coastal building. Did you hear that?
I beg your pardon?
Well, it's our first bi-coastal building.
And what is that?
Well, it's called the Broadway.
Yes.
And of course, Broadway's in New York, right?
That's correct.
And the first business that is signed on to move into the Broadway on the first floor is going to be
what?
Hollywood Video.
Do you know that for sure?
That's a fact. It was in the news press. Anything in the news press is a fact.
Oh, well, yeah, of course.
So
we don't know that, yeah.
So we have Hollywood Video in the Broadway. And it's in Falls Church, Virginia.
So we're
bi-coastal.
Okay, I like it. I like that idea.
So then all the people that are in the high-end condos can come downstairs and get their video, and they don't have to leave the building. Even leave or be part of the community. So it's really nice. And they'll have their own restaurant.
Is there a restaurant going in here?
Well, they say there will be. It hasn't been signed on yet.
Okay.
So I don't think it's going to be Red Lobster, though.
Is there? Well, they could just move across the street.
But I don't think
they could drag the fish right across the street. Okay.
Well, right into the swamp.
Yeah,
this
they
is a
could
swamp,
swim down.
Swamp, yeah.
Listen, let me ask you something. Is there going to be enough places for people to park if they want to come, or only people in the building will be able to eat in a restaurant?
They have underspec'd the parking because they figured that people who are this wealthy don't need vehicles.
No babies, no cars.
No babies, no cars, right. So there'll be only 1.4 people moving into each of the condos. And so they figure probably only need 2 SUVs.
In the whole thing?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway,
I see. And most of the people will have their groceries delivered, right?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is
This
terrific.
is going to be great. So we're going to have a lot of fun here. You and I are going to get rich, so we can stay here. We have to be rich to stay here.
In the town.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's part of the rule. That's part of the new rules. You have to be rich, and then we will have helicopter traffic to get across
the street. Perhaps a tunnel, maybe one of these days, underneath.
That would be good. I'd like that. That would be
How about a tunnel?
How about following the stream? The stream, the Cove stream that goes underneath the building there, literally, goes in a pipe under the street. Maybe they expand that so we can walk with the stream under the pipe.
Are the people going to be able to go downstairs and go fishing? In the basement?
They could do that.
They could do that. There's a thought, isn't it?
Yeah, they might catch some bluegills.
Okay. All right, I like that.
Well, Jerry, this has been a lot of fun, as usual.
Yeah,
and we've solved every problem.
Every problem in the city?
Every problem that Falls Church. We're going to get rich.
Right.
And then we're going to have helicopter traffic over Broad Street.
Okay.
That's it.
That's all. We've done the best we can.
Here we are going to the village, sitting on our front porches. Jerry Pressman, you're great.
Fantastic.
Okay,
Thank you.
Bye-bye now.
Bye now.
Nearly every street in Falls Church was arched over with trees. You walked under a bower. That's what made Falls Church so attractive.
Well, Jill, we're here walking under the bowers of trees, just like they said we used to. And we still have some bowers of trees to walk under. I guess we call them canopies now, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, we don't use the word bowers. But I'm here with Jill Spence. She's the arborist for the city and been an arborist for a long time. And if you have any trouble understanding her, she has an accent from Canada, and so we may put some subtitles under here. If you mind, don't walk away from here, then you'll be out of the camera.
Okay.
Okay.
Maybe that's what
this
I'm
is her
doing
first time on camera, so she's a little nervous.
I may run.
You may run. Well, we're here today to talk about how much flair you should give to your tree. Every tree should have flair. Is that right?
That's correct, Dave.
Okay.
Yes.
What the heck is a flair?
A root flare. The flare is the trunk of the tree, where the tree meets the ground. And there's...
Well, wait a minute. Now, the trunk is the whole thing, right?
Right.
And then the flare is sort of the in-between?
Yes.
Okay.
And there's many different terminologies for the trunk flare. It's also called the root flare.
Root flare?
And buttress roots.
Buttress root.
That's a good one. But I prefer to call it the trunk flare so that it people focus that the trunk needs a flare versus a root flare.
Okay, so you got the trunk.
Yes.
Okay, it's a big piece of wood that comes down with all this bark on it. and then it comes down, and where does the flare begin?
It's different on different types of trees.
Okay.
It's more pronounced, but these tulip poplars here, you can see where the flare is quite noticeable, and it gradually.
Okay, it comes out.
Yeah.
So where
it's
it
a
comes
flare.
out, essentially where the trunk comes out is called the flare.
Correct. Yes.
So why are we talking about this? Why do we care?
Because it's a very important indicator of how your tree was planted, the health of your tree, and this kind of zone of the tree, if it's planted too deeply, will impact its survivability.
So anyway, if I want a healthy tree, I don't want it falling down in the next storm, and I don't want to deal with any problems. I should have flare in my tree.
Definitely.
Now, I don't see a lot of flares in a lot of trees that are being planted these days around Northern Virginia and the whole region. I see a trunk coming straight down into the ground. I see no flare.
Right.
Why is that?
There's many different reasons. One of the biggest reasons is the volcano mulching.
Volcano mulch, it blows up?
No, well, no. Wish it did.
Okay.
But it actually becomes quite compacted and difficult to move. It's when people excessively put tons of mulch at the base of their tree, thinking that it's beneficial.
So anything that's good should have a lot.
Right.
That's what people think.
Yeah, people know
Yeah.
mulch is good.
Yeah.
So a lot must be better.
One aspirin is good, take 80.
Right.
Okay, so they take mulch. In fact, I don't see just individual homeowners doing that. I see people who are paid. And, I see landscaping crews, I see professionals coming in and dumping it and piling it up. So
Correct.
that's what you mean by a volcano. It's all
Yes.
piled up around it. And what's wrong with that?
It leads to, when you have too much mulch against the trunk of the tree, it creates opportunity. The mulch is placed directly up against the trunk of the tree. So when moisture collects, it will create opportunity for the bark of the tree to break down, and then there's like an opportunity for insects and diseases to get into the tree.
Okay, so the mulch gets wet.
Yeah.
And then it makes the bark of the flare in the trunk wet.
Yeah.
Then because they're wet, they rot.
Yes.
And part of the rotting process involves bugs. And so you get a lot of bugs.
Right.
So if we go up-
insects are opportunistic. They will not attack a healthy tree. So you needed to have a stressed tree and a weakened location on the tree for an insect or disease to get in there.
So if I
it's a
don't like
secondary-
if I don't like my neighbor's tree and I want it to come down, I'll pile it up. I'll say, hey, I'll put some mulch against your tree.
Right. You wouldn't do that, do you?
No, I wouldn't do that, but it's just if I wanted to,
Right.
Right, okay. Okay, so let's.
There's another issue, sorry,
Oh, there is?
with piling excessive mulch against trees, that it creates adventitious roots, which are...
That's easy for you to say.
Exactly.
We'll put that across the screen.
Thank you.
Adventitious.
Yes. But inside the inside the first layer of the bark, inside the cavium, there's latent bugs, and they're
Okay.
spurred into action when they're stressed or there's some change in their environment.
So they're just laying there without anything to
Latent
do,
bugs.
and they just say, they'll chill out for a while.
Yeah.
And then as soon as you get the mulch up there, and it gets nice and warm and nice and wet, they say, time to
Geez,
boogie.
what's going on? Yeah, and they'll turn into, they'll be encouraged to turn into roots, and that's when you'll get basically a false set or a false layer of roots, and those roots will just grow within the mulched area, and that creates, because the mulched area is, really susceptible to a lot of water, so. Moisture fluctuations
Okay.
between a lot of moisture and then drying out.
Okay.
So the tree becomes dependent on that false layer of roots, and that's why we encourage.
Well, so what?
Well, then
So what?
it doesn't. When we water trees, we water infrequently, slowly, and deeply because
Okay.
we want to encourage the tree roots to go further into the ground so that there's not as much fluctuation. Well, the tree ends up becoming dependent on this false layer of roots, and it impacts, you know, that's what a portion of the root system the tree will depend on for resources.
So in a nutshell, the tree is likely to get sick. It's likely to die younger than it should and be a problem.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And you said something to me earlier about root girdling that can result. Let's go over here just for a minute and let's look at this tree that has root girdling.
Right.
And I want you to explain to me a little bit about why that occurred.
Okay.
Okay, so there's a root over here, there's another root over here, the big one over here. Now, why would that root be growing out like that, and why would it have done that, and why should I care?
Okay. This root may have come from many different reasons.
Well, let's pretend there's one.
But we're going to pretend that it's from having excessive mulch
Okay.
against the trunk of the tree.
Okay.
So if you're a root, you put on growth where the conditions are beneficial.
Okay.
You will not put growth on in a dry area where it's, you know,
Okay.
where it's more difficult to get into another soil layer.
Okay.
So if you're living in a mulched layer, it's nice, it's air, lots of pore space to put on growth versus going into the soil. So what
Okay.
ends up happening is the roots circle.
Oh, so they circle. So that's what girdling means. It circles around like that.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then what does it do?
Well, what will happen, and this is one thing that your trunk flare can tell you, is if you do have a girdling root that you cannot see at the surface.
Okay.
The trunk of the
Why don't
tree.
you put your hand over here so the camera
Okay.
can see it? It's not-
Well, and this is actually a little bit symptomatic of a girdling root. And now that I look at it, that it's flat on
Okay.
one side, but
Okay.
it would be flat on the side where the girdling root is. So there may actually be another girdling root underneath here.
Okay.
that's-
So what's it going to do to the
What's
tree?
it going to do? When a tree puts on growth, it puts on radial growth. It puts on extension growth from the tips of the branches, and it also puts on diameter growth. And that happens to the roots also. So when this tree is when this root is putting on growth, it's putting pressure against the trunk of the tree.
Okay.
So it's creating and it's putting pressure
Okay.
on the trunk of the tree. So this is going to be a weak, if this tree matures and continues to grow with this girdling root here, it'll cut off literally this side of the tree's
Okay, so
root
it's
system.
okay. So it's going to strangle.
It will strangle.
It'll strangle the tree, and the tree will start getting.
Right, and it creates a really good opportunity for a point of failure.
For what?
For a point of failure.
Oh, point of failure. Okay.
Yeah, because
Okay.
it could
A point of
create
failure means the tree's going to die.
it could fail. It could fall over
Fall
from
over.
that.
Oh,
from
okay.
that root.
Oh, I see. That makes sense now. Okay. Now I get it. Okay.
Yeah.
So, in other words, it's really bad to pile
Yes.
mulch up. Now, there's another reason you told me is that in nurseries, a lot of times they pile dirt up on top
Of the root
of the
ball.
root ball. And so when you get a tree, if you don't see a little bit of a flare,
Yeah.
you should sort of gently dig down and get that.
Right. We're looking at this tree because this tree does not have any flare.
Poor tree.
Yeah, as exciting as it is, it doesn't have a trunk flare.
Well, show me what you mean.
It looks
I'll step
like this
back.
tree
you
is
show
a
me.
pencil. Just
pencil?
Stuck in the soil, if you can imagine that. We should be seeing a gradual increase in the diameter of the trunk at the base of, I guess where it would meet the soil.
So you mean it's going straight down? There's no flare.
There is no flare.
That's a problem. Now, why is there no flare?
There's a little bit excess mulch piled up against the trunk of the tree.
Well, that
which
was
is
kind of you, meaning there's too much mulch.
There
It should not
is.
have been put against the trunk.
correct.
So what happens once you get your hands dirty, and rather than me, and show what happens when you pull the mulch away? Will the bark be dry?
It is very moist, and you can tell that, I don't know if you can see this, but there's actually some little tiny roots.
Oh,
that
through
have
the magic of
started-
television,
Yeah.
they'll see that.
There's some little tiny roots that have started to grow from the trunk of the tree, which is very, these are adventitious roots. These are the roots that
We'll
are
just call them a problem.
a problem root, correct. So you would definitely want to remove the excess mulch at least 2 inches away from the trunk of the tree, and no more than 2 to 3 inches.
Now, sometimes
So-
when I've pulled mulch away, I find a lot of bugs crawling around. Fortunately, I don't see a lot of bugs right now because this is winter.
Right.
So this is cold. But if you do that in the summer, you're going to see a lot of bugs in there.
Right.
And so you got roots. You got a lot of the wrong roots. You got the bugs, you got moisture, it's rotting. Why are we continuing to put mulch against trees? Why are we doing that?
I think people are not aware.
Jill Spence, now they're going to see you starring in a film pretty soon, aren't they?
I don't think I'm starring.
Oh, you're not starring yet, right?
Hopefully I'm
Well, we're
gonna
having a
star
film coming
a
out.
supporting role.
March 22nd
Hopefully I'll walk through.
Yeah, March 22nd premiering at the DC Environmental Film Festival. It's called Laying Down Roots.
Yep.
It's about our neighborhood tree program.
Excellent program.
And it will be at the State Theater with live with musicians on Wednesday night, March 24th. Stay tuned. You're going to see yourself
I'll be there.
You will be, whether
be
you
there
like it
with
or not.
flare on.
You'll be flare on with on the big screen.
Right.
Thanks, Jill.
Thank you.
Okay.
Take care.
I loved going to the village. Everybody knew everybody. I would say, "Hello, Mrs. Brown," or "Hello, Mr. Hawkshurst," and they would all know me and my kin.
I just gave a show for about 100 people last Wednesday night over at Goodwin Houseway.
Well, wait a minute, this is too good. Wait a minute. If you can make me talk, I think that'll get you a lot of money in this town.
Maybe you don't need any help.
Yeah, right. Yeah. No, could you put a voice in my mouth?
Well, if I push you in the back, let's see if you can open your mouth like this. Oh no, that's very good. All right, then I will sing a little bit of a song. Little Sir Echo, how do you do? Hello, 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 hello. Little Sir Echo, I'm being blue. Hello, 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 hello. Won't you come over and play? You're a nice little fellow, I know by your voice, but you're always so far away.
Well, we're here in good old Falls Church today with a very familiar face, a familiar face that many people know. And my familiar face today is Mrs. Mary Brewer Barclay.
Right?
And that's a well-known name to many people. Why would that be? Why is your name well known?
Well, I happen to have been teaching here in Falls Church when I first came up here in 1934, and I taught 1934, 35, 36, and I got married during that last year of teaching, and moved into Arlington, Virginia after that.
Well, we won't talk about that now. Yeah, you're going over the edge there now. But let's talk a little bit about when you moved here. You had some relatives here.
Yes, my uncle, George M. Newell, was my uncle. He was on General Pershing's staff, and for a while, this was his summer home here.
And we have a picture. First, he was the printer for a book called Virginia Village.
Right.
And this was the first book ever really written about Falls Church, so this is pretty exciting.
Well, it was very exciting, but he had a little shop out in the backyard, and his son, J.H. Newell, did the printing for this book at that time.
And so here's his house right here.
Right, right.
And so this house no longer is in existence. Is
No.
it? It's a parking lot.
That yes, it's a parking lot for the Columbia Baptist Church.
So they took
No.
Paradise and put up a parking lot. I mean, this is a beautiful house.
And James Thurber, used to come over and play with them because his summer home was right behind their house.
So
too.
James Thurber's town was Falls Church. Our town was Falls Church. How about that?
He came to visit here.
Oh, yeah.
You see, he came to stay sometime in the summer.
So we'd like to say our town is about Falls Church.
Right, right.
Oh, that's great.
And then I have a son who built those townhouses there. Paul Barkley.
That's why that
And-
name is so
and that's
famous,
why it's
right? Now,
called-
because every time I pick up the paper, I see your son's name in there.
Right.
Okay. Okay.
So, but I came to teach school at Madison School.
Well, so this was a pretty new school when you came here. According to this, in fact, we have a school dedicated at Falls Church in 1926. So this was a young school.
Yes, it was. Of course, I didn't realize it at the time, but the State Theater had just been built one year when I came up, and it was so close, you see, there to the school. And we had a glee club, and I was put in charge of the glee club that year, and we had contests all through. You see, Falls Church was not a city at that time.
Well, in fact, it's interesting. Right here it says,
Yeah.
new school at Falls Church, largest in Fairfax County. So Falls Church was part of Fairfax County, and so was the
Exactly.
school.
Yes.
So this Madison School was the largest one in Fairfax County.
Right, and the newest one, I think. And Mr. Woodson interviewed me for the job, you see, and I got the job there. And so we won the contest. And the second year, and it took place at
Now, isn't there, wait a minute, there's a little bit more to this story here. I think you're skipping over it. Didn't somebody say that something was wrong, that you shouldn't be doing that, or what was that story?
well, our principal that we had, Miss Edwards, was her name. She was very good, but sort of prim, you know.
Yeah.
And so she said she didn't give us too much time to practice a lot of times. She wanted us back in the classrooms. And so she said, oh, you'll never win anything with that funeral dirge.
So it wasn't bawdy songs you were singing. It was no sea chanties or anything
well,
like that.
Fairfax was singing things. One of the Fairfax High School was singing things like "Mama's Little Dove," like shortening,
yeah.
you know, little things.
And
And
you-
we sang "Danny Boy," you know, and it was very nice. Anyway, we won it, and when we came back, the kids were all hanging out of the windows and shouting, you know. And
So you
everything.
performed at the State Theater.
Well, you could say that, yes.
Wow. Well, this, hanging out of the windows, I guess that wasn't considered dangerous then. Here's some pictures right here of Madison School. So were they hanging out of the second-story windows?
Oh, well, you know, they were at the windows. They were not hanging out exactly, but they were all, you know, they were up out of their seats. And according to Miss Edwards, a little disruptive, I think, or something like that.
Well, that's quite an honor that you had there to win there. And now tell me about Madison School, because we have great pictures of them here, and this looked like a really solid school.
Well, it seemed to be. We had although they were getting a lot more children in, and so in '37 was started when I was there in '36. They built these little temporary buildings out in the backyard. In
You
the
were still doing
playground.
that now, yeah.
Yeah, then,
Right.
because I taught a half a year back there in one of those little temporary buildings
Okay.
in 1937, you see. But I went to the party that they had before they tore down the building,
Right.
and it just took me back. I just felt like I could go right in and see Jean Reed she played the piano, playing "On Wisconsin, On Wisconsin." She said that was the only march she knew.
Oh, I was going to say, well, that was an unusual song to play here in Falls Church.
Right.
Now, let's see. It was built in 1926, and you said you went to the closing ceremony. That was in 1979.
I believe so.
So that's lasted a few years. That was a very solid building. What was it like going into the Madison School when you walked in the front doors?
Well, I don't know. It was just another school to me. You know,
Yeah.
I had been teaching in South Carolina and North Carolina before I
okay.
came up here.
Oh,
So,
okay.
but yes, I was a little apprehensive, you know, about new people, and also teaching this age child, because I was teaching third grade in South Carolina,
Okay.
and that was a little bit of a jump.
Yeah, to the big kids, yeah.
Right.
Now, how did the kids get to school? Did they take a bus?
I think I don't remember.
Oh,
Most
okay.
of them walked to school,
Now you took a bus.
and I could ride the bus the second year when I was here in '37 because I lived at Mrs. Fellows' home.
No, you didn't live with the fellows.
Mr. and Mrs. Harry Fellows.
Oh, okay, I see.
Right. But the first year, I lived on Columbia Street with Mrs. William S. Brown.
I was in this house right here.
Yes.
Oh, this is one of my
yes.
favorite houses in the
I
whole.
know. I think so too. And the little room up here at the top, Allie K. Libby. You remember Miss Libby?
Uh-huh.
And she had that a little room upstairs in the little top part.
Where did you live in the front up here?
I lived the first room around on the side.
Oh, I love that area
Hall
right
and
there.
everything.
What a great house.
And I lived with Dorothy Callis, who married Jimmy Hollins later.
Okay.
And Frances Jane Hollins was
Okay.
one of my students
Oh, good.
there
Okay.
in Falls Church. And Mrs. Brown was a Snyder. She belonged to the Snyder's Hardware.
Oh, yes, that used to be up
people.
where Route 66 is now.
Right.
Right.
And so I paid all the big sum of $30 a month
But that was a lot of money then.
for room and board.
But that was a lot of money then.
Right. But she also fixed sandwiches and lunch for us, and we got Saturday and Sunday dinners with her too, which was quite a.
But that was about a third of your salary.
Well, see, I made only $95 a month.
There you go. There you go. So that was a considerable amount of money.
Right.
You didn't have too much money to go to the State Theater on.
No.
You had to sing there in order to get in, right?
And then when I was taking a speech course in Washington, and so when I went in on the bus, if you went from Falls Church, the city of what is now the city of Falls Church, you paid 15 cents to go all the way. Then you could get a transfer and take you any way you wanted to for that. But where I lived in 37 up with Mrs. Fellows, I paid only 10 cents to go. So that was
Yeah.
as far as the money is
Yeah.
concerned.
Now tell me about the kids. Were they all, causing you trouble all the time, and you just, were pulling your hair out? I mean, were they were pretty
Well-
rowdy kids?
I don't recall them being so rowdy. They were just, the kids, but they, I never had any trouble with anybody.
Did you have a ruler?
Too much.
Did you have a ruler?
But I used to, as you said, read. I used to read a lot of things to them, and they enjoyed it. And I always believed that if the children are going to be in school with you all day, it ought to be sort of happy and
That's
you
good.
have a good time
There's a
together.
thought.
Everything. And I could laugh right along with the kids, especially when we had a fire drill, and it turned out not to be the fire drill. It was for the younger children to come back in from playground, and we misinterpreted and thought Dixie Middleton was my co-teacher, and Mrs. Cox, who turned out to be Mrs. Keyes later. And so we were up at the top, you see, upstairs. And so we heard the bell, and we ran down the stairs and went outside, and Miss Edwards was furious with us because we'd gotten out of school. But we came back in and laughed and had such a good time about it.
Well, that sounds like
So
fun.
I enjoyed my teaching very much.
Now you got relieved of duty and then rehired, I understand, in just a matter of an hour. Is that right? That the principal had to say that that you had left the job and he had to introduce somebody. Tell me that story.
Right. Well, during the Depression, people didn't have much money to do all the things, so we just stepped off and got married one weekend. And so I called them and told them.
You and the principal?
No.
Oh.
I called the principal, who was Mr. Siegfried
Oh, okay.
at that time, and I called and told him that that I had gotten married and that I would not come until noon. And so he was a good sport, and we liked him very much too. So he told the children, he said, "I have some bad news for you. Miss Brewer will not be back." That was my name at that time. And they said, "Oh, what's happened to Miss Brewer and all?" He said, "So I'll introduce you to your new teacher, after lunch. And so when he came up, and the kids all sitting around and said, all right. Then I walked in and he said, I'd like you to meet your new teacher, Mrs. Paul Barkley.
Yeah, that's great.
So one of the little girls said, oh, will it be in the paper? And I said, well, I imagine so because I married a newspaper man.
There you go.
And she said, what page is it going to be on in the sports section? So anyway, I guess they had my number.
Yeah. Well, a couple of things here, because I have a couple of surprises for you here. I want to show you a couple of pictures. These were after you finished teaching. You were already raising your child. But we have some pictures here of students out in this big field with a lot of kids. What do you think they're doing?
Oh, this was a May Day program, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Yes.
there looks like a
yes.
May.
I had a little photograph of this May Day there, but I couldn't find it.
Oh. So, I mean, tell me about May Day. I mean, we don't do that. We don't do that now. What's going on?
Well, we used to do that all the time, right on up. Even when my children were going to school, they had May Day. It was just a wonderful celebration and a chance for, for us to have some fun and get all those. And you get so hooked up in those things that it was funny too,
Yeah, I mean,
When
everybody's
you
wearing
pull those-
costumes. Look at these,
Yeah,
the girls are wearing all these gowns.
Right.
And they got this maypole. I mean, we don't do anything like that anymore. I mean, maybe I might have somebody here who can talk with you about that because this is something that we don't have in our experience anymore. It looks like they're planting a tree here. Do they do that on May Day too? Planting a little tree?
Oh, that was Arbor Day.
Oh, you had Arbor Day.
Oh, yes, we had Arbor Day all
Oh,
the time,
okay.
planting trees.
Oh, good. And does this look like something like? Did you have play? Was this part of May Day where they dressed up like in the Wizard of Oz, or was that some other special event?
Well, that could have been May
Okay.
Day.
Okay. Yeah, because they look like they're dressed about the same.
Right, right.
Well, we have a few people here I want to introduce you to. And we have who's going to talk to you for a few minutes. We have a gentleman by the name of Mr. Robert Grill. This is to refresh your memory. Mr.
yeah.
Robert Grill.
Oh, look
and
at that.
Now this is from 1937, and he's going to talk to you a little bit and maybe ask you a few questions because I'm not sure if he has something to show you that he wants to talk to you about. Is that okay?
Oh, yes,
So,
that would be great.
yeah,
Isn't that
let's,
exciting?
Introduce Mr. Robert Grill is going to sit at my place right here,
Okay.
and then he's going to introduce you to another gentleman named Mr. Robert Ball. Oh no, I'm sorry, Mr. William Ball.
William Ball.
And you may have known him as something
Billy.
else. Oh, Billy.
Billy.
Okay, I wouldn't say that. Okay, so
Right.
let's switch. We're going to magically, in the world of TV, I am going to become Mr. Robert Grill.
Oh, that's exciting.
Hi, Mary.
Well, for heaven's sakes,
are
Bobby
you?
Grill.
Yeah,
Goodness, isn't that exciting?
you look great, absolutely great.
Well, thank you. I'm feeling fine, too.
Good.
This is just wonderful to see somebody who was in the class way back then. And I see you have a picture here that has you in it, right here, I believe.
Yeah,
Is that
that's
right?
me. Yeah.
And then tell me about, this is Frances Jane Hollins, I believe, right?
Yeah, no, Frances Jane was in the class before me.
Oh, she was in the class before. She's not in this picture.
Yeah.
then.
Yeah.
Right. And what are you doing now, Bobby?
Well, I'm still working in accounting and taxes in Falls Church,
I see.
and I will continue to do. They will move me right from the office to the cemetery, I think.
I see. So it was sort of exciting to have you come back. And you remember when you were in my class? You remember
I sure
the things
do.
that we
In
did?
fact, I brought along several report cards there.
Oh, my heavens. You still have a report card?
And I'll mention the teachers before. I have 6 report cards. I started.
6 report cards. I didn't know you had that.
I started in at Madison in 1930. Alice Williams was the teacher, and she put me on the honor roll.
Honor roll.
And Nellie Williams in 31 to 32. She put me on the honor roll.
My goodness.
And Jeanette Luther and Miss Fravel.
Oh, yes. I remember Jeanette Luther very much.
And
Very much.
32 to 33, I made the honor roll. The fourth grade, Jean Reed.
Oh, Jean Reed. She played the piano, you know.
Yeah, 33 to 34. She put me on the honor roll.
I kept up with her for a long time after
These
she
were great.
moved away.
Nellie Williams was the one I think probably that taught as long as any of them. 34 to 35, Helen Hurdle.
Helen Hurdle, that's who I was trying to think of. Her father was mayor of Falls Church at one
Yeah,
time.
she put me on the honor roll.
Right.
Then we're down to Mary Brewer, 35 to 36.
Right.
No honor roll. So
What happened?
I have a pin here.
Oh.
And would it be asking too much? I would really be honored if you would put me on the honor roll.
Well, I'll put you on the honor roll right now, just for
I would
just
appreciate
for
it.
saving all those for you there. And where do you put that honor roll?
Anywhere you want to put it. In fact,
Does it-
write it over the whole thing if you want.
Okay. I'll put it at 2000. Isn't this something? 2003.
Yeah.
And I'm still here.
Well, that really means a lot to me, and I appreciate it.
Oh, that's great.
And I
Robert.
have an older friend here, William Ball, that he was in an earlier class, as he's older than I am.
Right, because I noticed on your report card, you know, you had an L there for low.
Yeah.
And for a while, people thought, well, that was sort of a low class or something. But it actually wasn't. It was because the children entered at Madison School and twice a year. So the people who started in September were in the L, or the low class, and those who went in February were evidently in the high class, just to distinguish it. So at least, you see, you couldn't have gotten all those A's and B's and honor rolls and been in a low class.
I'll take it just like it is.
Okay, that's wonderful.
Okay.
Good morning, Miss Brewer.
Good morning.
That
to you.
William Ball sound kind of form. I'm Billy Ball.
Oh, Billy
from,
Ball.
From West Falls Church.
I have West Falls Church.
West Falls Church.
Right. And so you were in my class then.
I was in, probably one of the first ones, because I was a year or maybe two ahead of Bob Grill.
So you
and I
were probably
transferred-
there in 34, 35.
Well, I
then.
transferred in from St. James.
Uh-huh.
I went to St. James because I lived across the street.
Right, that was
And
good.
you mentioned Dorothy Callis. She was my
Oh.
first teacher
Now,
in public school.
Is that right? Well, I roomed with Dot the first year that I was here. She was my roommate. And then she married Jimmy Hollins. You remember
Yeah, I remember
Jimmy
Jimmy.
Hollins?
And Frances Jane, Fanny Hollins, was in my class.
Oh, yes.
We graduated.
She was a very interesting little girl. I understand she's got married and has 10 children.
Yeah, she's got a lot of children. Lives
Right.
down near, well, not too far from Charlottesville. In
Is that right?
Area of the state.
Well, I'd love to see some of these kids, and this is wonderful to get to see you too, and Bobby, and I just wish I could have seen a lot more of them who are still around this area. I understand Virginia Cousins didn't go to Madison, but because she was in East Falls Church, but Carolyn Brooks.
Yeah, I
Well,
knew-
did you remember Carolyn
Yeah, I
Brooks?
knew Carolyn Brooks. She was
Right.
a pretty girl.
Well, we're in the same DAR chapter now.
No way.
You're right. So I get to see Carolyn every now and then, and so that's good.
Well, I remember going home and telling my mother I really had a pretty teacher.
Oh,
So
my.
It's
flattering.
And then what I really remember about your class, because it's been a long time.
I know.
Was you were reading aloud. I think you were the first teacher I ever had, and and the last, including college, that ever read aloud to the
Is that
to the
right?
class. And you could put the right emphasis in it, and the poem, I guess it is, that stands out is The Highwayman.
Oh, yes, one of my
And,
favorites.
Road was a ribbon of moonlight across the purple moor. I remember
Oh, yeah.
some of the lines from it.
You could sort of make it come alive,
right.
you know, to them. I enjoyed reading. But see, I was teaching the social studies, the English and history and things like that. So that's why I employed a lot of poetry and things like that in the class. And I'm glad to know that you still remember that.
Still remember that. That's right. Well, reading aloud's an art, and not everybody can do it, but you could.
Oh.
And,
Well, I appreciate that.
well, that's a fond memory.
Oh, that's just great.
But I didn't bring any report cards. All my report cards are in the Smithsonian. And I'm retired.
Good.
They're not going to carry me from work to the cemetery.
Right. Well, that's good. Well, you know, when you retire, you don't have to give up work.
So no,
You
you
know,
don't.
Like,
I do a little volunteer work around, and you know. By the way, you said you lived at Brown's house there on Columbia. My grandparents lived next door to where you live.
oh, is that right?
It was Ida Bishop Ball, Ida Ball Bishop,
Oh, yes,
and
that
Carrie
rings a
Ball.
bell.
Yeah.
Ah, yeah. And then
lived
Bunny Gibson lived in one of those houses.
Yeah, he
down
lived
to-
2 houses down.
Yeah. And he was he was an interesting kid too.
Sometimes I would walk to and from the village along the roads, but I loved to walk the trails and alleys behind houses, through fields and woods. It just seemed more special.
Well, today we're here at Reese Place in the city of Falls Church, and the trail we're going to go down is a trail that almost nobody knows exists. And people don't recognize it, people don't know it's here, so here's a little secret about Falls Church. The trail at Reese Place. We start at the end of the cul-de-sac on Reese Place. This was just behind where the Red Lobster used to be, and we were just talking about that earlier today. And the trail, believe it or not, starts on a driveway that looks like a private driveway, but it's really part of the public access. And we're going to walk down. It feels fairly uncomfortable doing this, but this is, in fact, public access trail. And the trail doesn't have a name yet, and the public land here doesn't have a name yet, but the city is about to name it as a park, and it'll be quite an interesting place. Well, it looks like I'm walking down a steep hill here, but that's not a natural hill. This area used to be swamp, just like we talked about earlier in the show over by the Red Lobster. This was swamp also, but this is all built up with highway materials from the 1950s and early 60s. This was brought into private land and dumped here to build up the area. And you can see some of it still remaining right here along the side of the trail. And all of this is underground. And in the mid-90s, when these townhouses were built, they were all built right on landfill and of highway debris. And like I say, you can see some right here by the side of the trail. And they had to put big steel beams, girders down in through all of that muck to stabilize the buildings. But the trail here is what's called a pervious trail. It's made of a stone dust and with beams along the side. And the area does get quite wet, but we're going between public land to my right, that'd be your left, and then immediately with apartments on my left, your right. But this trail is a public trail, and this park over here will soon become known as a public park with a name, etc. And it's got a beautiful little stream next to it, and we'll be coming up to that in just a minute as we come by here. Well, as we come down the trail, we're turning to the right, and we're going into what is a little bit of a park, and we're going to stop right here at the Coe Branch. Now, this stream flows into Tripp's Run by TJ School, so it's called the Coe Branch of Tripp's Run. And this stream starts up by Mount Daniel, where a lot of the children go to school. It's a very high hill, and it flows down mostly underground in pipes. It's spring-fed, but mostly flows down in pipes underground and comes out in the woods right here by Reese Place and flows into Tripp's Run. Now, remember when we talked about earlier in the show by the Red Lobster and the Broadway and what's going to be the Byron, it's all piped up there, but it's still flowing. It's a real stream, and when it gets down in the woods is the first time it's open to daylight. Now, the water is not clear, and the reason it's not clear is because of a lot of the interface with highways and piping, and so it's not very clean water. Back in the 1930s, when the Reese family lived here, they would actually fish. We have some letters that talk about fishing out of this stream. It was deep enough to swim in, and the fish they catch were bluegills. They weren't bass or trout. That would have been about 30 years before that. But in the 1930s, they caught bluegills, and they'd fry them up and eat them. You wouldn't want to do any of that now. There's no bluegills here, and you wouldn't want to really even touch the water. And it's really a shame. This flows into the Tripp's Run and to Lake Barcroft, where people do fish and swim, and then down into the Potomac River and the Chesapeake Bay. So unfortunately, this is our contribution to the Chesapeake Bay, and it's not anything to be proud of. We can change this, and we hope we will. So I encourage you to come on down and look at the Coe Branch. It is a perennial stream. That means it's ever flowing. And even in drought, you'll see it. It won't be as high as this during a drought condition, but it'll still be flowing. It goes underground right here, and then comes out, and then flows again underground till it comes out at TJ through some big pipes. We're hoping one day to daylight or to open up all those perennial streams like this, and to recover the stream banks. The Chesapeake Bay Act was intended to do this, but we haven't done a very good job of working on that. Over to my left over here is a little bit more public land, and I know that the city would like to get all of this woods for parkland. The woods used to extend when I moved here to where Reese Place was. That was all woods. That'd come down, there'd be fox and deer and possum and raccoon and raptors, turtles, all kinds of things in here. And there's not too much left now with the new townhouses. And but we're hoping to preserve this one last woods down here. Most of it is private property still, but this part I showed you of this path, this very small path, is on public land. I do encourage you to come down and visit the Coe Branch of Tripp's Run.
One of the most interesting things to me is that right in the middle of Falls Church, right in the middle of one of the fastest urbanizing areas anywhere, we have magnificent old houses and trees, beautiful music still in homes and on the streets, marvelous places to gather, and trails to return home on. It makes me wonder why these wonderful qualities of village life remain here in Falls Church.